Hey everyone. So we're going to work through the first part of the practice exam, like through questions 27. And what this is from chapter 2 and 3, where you look at the production possibilities frontier, the circular flow diagram, and looking at the terms of trade. Okay, so we'll start off here with number 1. And refer to table 1. The opportunity cost of one airplane for Japan is what? Well, so Japan can produce either 16 airplanes if they spend all their time producing airplanes, or they can produce 80 cars. All right. So to get the opportunity cost for one airplane, well, we just divide both of these by 16. And what does that give us? The opportunity cost of one airplane is 5 cars. And that is C. Okay. All right. 2. What's the opportunity cost of one airplane for Korea? Well, Korea can produce either 16 airplanes or 48 cars. Okay, same way here to get the opportunity cost, just divide by 16 both sides to get this to one airplane. And then so the opportunity cost of one airplane for Korea is 3 cars. Okay, and that's C as well. All right, number 3. For Japan, what's the opportunity cost of one car? Well, they can either produce 80 cars or 16 airplanes. To get how many opportunity cost of one car, we'll divide this by 80. And so the opportunity cost of one car is 1/5 of an airplane. Okay. It takes a lot longer for them to produce an airplane than a car. So to give it one car, they only got to give it 1/5 of an airplane. And so that's A. 4, we're going to look at Korea. What's the opportunity cost of one car for Korea? Well, it's 48 cars to 16 airplanes. Divide both sides by 48. Well, what's the opportunity cost of one car? Well, that's going to be 1/3 of an airplane. All right, and that is A as well. Okay, that's all you do with these. It's like, well, they spend all their time producing airplanes, they do this versus cars, and then to get it in terms of the opportunity cost of one of them, we just need to divide that to get it, whatever it takes to get it to the opportunity cost like one of the airplane or one of the cars. Okay, and here this is what they have to give up. Okay, if Japan spends their time producing airplanes to the car, what's the opportunity cost of airplane? Well, they can't produce cars while producing airplanes at the same time. So it's going to cost them producing a certain amount of cars because they're using their manpower somewhere else. All right. So that's what we're talking about, the opportunity costs. Like, what are they missing out on? Well, what could they be doing instead? What's the if they didn't produce airplanes, well, they could spend this time producing cars. All right. What's the opportunity cost for a car? Well, it's how many airplanes that they're giving up here, or what portion of an airplane they're giving up. All right, 5. What was this one? Japan has an absolute advantage in the production of what? Okay. Well, Japan can produce 80 cars and 16 airplanes. Korea can produce 48 cars and 16 airplanes. Here, we're absolute advantage It's the actual total production of vehicles. Who's the best at producing? Who can produce the most of one good versus the other? All right. You're not looking at opportunity cost with absolute advantage. Well, Japan has an absolute advantage in cars. They can produce 80, that's greater than 48 from Korea. All right. So Japan has absolute advantage, whereas Korea didn't have absolute advantage in either one of them. They can produce just as many airplanes, but that's not an absolute advantage because it's the same, and they produce less cars than Japan. So, all right, Korea neither. And so that's going to be C. All right, 6. Japan has a comparative advantage in the production of what? Well, remember the opportunity cost. What was it for cars? Well, Japan was 1/5. All right. And what about Korea? Well, it was 1/3 of an airplane. All right. So Japan has a lower opportunity cost. It only costs them one airplane. 1/5 of an airplane versus 1/3 for Korea. So Japan has a comparative advantage in producing cars. Well, what about airplanes? Well, here it's the opposite. Korea has a lower opportunity cost. They only have to give up 3 cars for each airplane, whereas the opportunity cost for Japan is 5. It's a lot more costly for Japan to produce airplanes than it is for Korea. So Korea has a comparative advantage with airplanes. All right, and so that'll be A. What does number 7 say? Refer to table 1. Japan should specialize in the production of what they have comparative advantage in. All right. Japan cars, and Korea should produce airplanes. That's what they should specialize in if they want to trade. Okay, so that's going to be C. All right. Refer to table 1. Assume Japan and Korea each had 24 hours of labor available. Originally, each country divided its time equally between the production of cars and airplanes. Now each spends all its time producing the good in which has comparative advantage. As a result, the total output of cars increased by what? Let's erase this. And first thing we'll have to do is, what will they each produce? They split their time equally between producing each good. So Japan, they can produce 80 cars if they spend all their time, so they can produce 40 if they spend half their time. And they can produce 8 airplanes, all right, if they spend, half their time producing airplanes. What about Korea? Well, for them, they can only produce 48 cars, so they'll produce 24 if they spend half their time doing that. And airplanes is the same thing. It's 8, the same as Japan. All right. Now, if they both specialize in what they're best at, they have a comparative advantage. Japan will produce 80 cars. Well, what about Korea? Well, they'll produce 16 airplanes. All right. So it's asking what will the total output of cars increase by? Well, if they both split their time, it would be 64. 40 plus 24, 64. But still, we got 80. So subtract 64 from 80, and that'll be 16. There's going to be 16 more cars now as a result of doing this. All right. Okay, number 9. Here it's asking about the prices. Which one of these will be good? So first, I need to let me erase this. I need all the room to write this on here, and I'll rewrite when you're trying to look at these prices, you need to look what you got for the opportunity cost. Okay, so this is 9. So look at your opportunity cost. And remember we said that, for cars, what was it? Yeah. So for cars, the opportunity cost for Japan was 1/5 of an airplane versus Korea, 1/3 of an airplane. Well, what about the opportunity cost for airplanes? Well, for Korea, it was 3 cars. But for Japan, it was 5 cars. Right. But for Japan, it was 5 cars. All right, so Korea had a comparative advantage in these. So it's asking about, at which price will they trade? Well, Japan's going to produce cars, Korea airplanes. Okay. So Japan's going to produce cars. Korea is going to produce airplanes. All right. So it's giving us all these prices. How can we determine which one's good? Well, first you need to find the parameters for which it would be a good deal. So we'll put it price for the airplanes. I'm sorry, price for car. Okay. And so for the price per car, you want to use the opportunity cost of cars here, and that'll set your parameter. And so what's your lower bound? Well, it's going to be 1/5 of an airplane. All right. What about your upper bound? Well, that's going to be 1/3 of an airplane. All right. So the terms for trade need to be between 1/5 of an airplane per car and no greater than 1/3 of an airplane per car. Okay. And why would you not go lower than 1/5 per car? Well, this is a bad deal for Japan. Why would they want to trade? Why would they want to trade these if they don't get more than 1/5? They'll just build their own airplanes. They can build, instead of building the car, they can just build their own airplane by doing this. So that they need to get something greater than this lower bound here that they have. Okay. Well, what about 1/3? Well, Korea, if it goes above that, it would be a bad deal for Korea. They would be, trading away too many airplanes per car. It wouldn't be worth their while. They could just produce their own cars instead. This would be a bad deal for them. That's what you can always say. Just look at your opportunity cost, the lower bound in Japan. All right. So, they're not going to trade for anything lower than this price. Whereas Korea is not going to trade anything higher than this. These would be bad deals for them. They'd be better off just doing it on their own. They'll end up with more of each good. All right. So it needs to be between this. All right. It needs to be between 1/5 of the airplane per car and 1/3 of an airplane per car. So let's look at the prices. 3 airplanes for 3 cars. All right. So this is A. So 3 airplanes, 3 cars. Well, it's going to be 1 airplane per car. Well, that's going to be too high. That's not a bad deal for Korea. So A is not going to work. What about B? Well, it's 3 airplanes. I'll just write air. 3 cars. What's that going to be? I'm sorry, 12 cars. Well, that's going to be 1/4 airplane per car. Well, that's right in the middle of there. Okay. That's a good deal for Japan and a good deal for Korea. Okay, but they would both be willing to make that trade. What about C? Well, we already know it's going to be B, but let's just do C and show what's wrong with it. 5 airplanes, 12 cars. Well, we know this is somewhere. We know 1/3 here from Korea is the same as, 412. Let's erase this right here. Sorry. Let's convert this to what it is with the denominator of 12. So you multiply the numerator and the denominator by 4, and that'll give you 4 airplanes for 12 cars. This is greater than that. So this would be a bad deal for Korea. So you know it's going to be B. All right. And that's what you have to do. Use your opportunity cost. And then the opportunity cost for each one, that'll give you the price per car that you're willing to do. You need to stay within, the lowest opportunity cost and the highest opportunity cost. Okay. All right. So that was 9. Now let's go to 10. Let me erase this. Number 10. All right, so Japan, Korea each spend all time producing the goods in which it has comparative advantage. The countries agree to trade 3 airplanes for 10 cars. So Japan will produce 80 cars. Korea, 16 airplanes. But now they're going to trade. And so what are they going to trade? Well, Korea is going to trade 10 cars to Japan. And Japan is going to trade 3. Oh, man, I got her backwards. Sorry. Japan's, they're producing cars. So they're going to trade away 10 cars to Korea in exchange for 3 airplanes. All right, so now we can know how much each consumes. So first, Japan, they're trading away 10 of their 80 cars. So Japan will have 80 minus 10, 70 cars. And what are they getting in exchange for that? Well, 3 airplanes. What about Korea? Well, we know they produce 16 airplanes, but they trade away 3 of them. So they're going to consume 13 airplanes. And then the 10 cars are getting from Japan. 13 airplanes, 10 cars. And so that's going to be A. All right. 11. So refer to table 1. Without trade, Japan produced and consumed 50 cars and 6 airplanes, and Korea consumed 27 cars and 7 airplanes. That's how they decided to divide up their time. Then they agreed to trade. And so they each specialize in what they're best at. And they traded 28 cars for 8 airplanes. So here it wants to determine who gains what. So we already said Japan, 80 cars. Korea, 16 airplanes because they're specializing. Now what do? Well, they're going to trade 28 cars for 4 airplanes. All right. So Japan's going to trade away 24 cars. And so they're going to end up having 56. Wait a minute. Oh, I'm sorry, 27 cars. No, 28. This is 28 cars. So that's 52. Yeah, I was reading the wrong thing. Japan will trade 28 cars because they're the one producing cars. So they end up with 52. And what are they getting in return? 8 airplanes. What about Korea? Well, they're going to trade away 8 airplanes. So they're going to end up with 8 airplanes. How many cars are they getting? 28. All right, so what's the difference here for Japan? They're going to 52 cars versus 50 that they had before the trade. So they gained 2 there, 2 cars. Whereas they had 6 airplanes to begin with, and they got 8 instead. So they gained 2 airplanes. What about Korea? Well, at first they had 27 cars, but now they're going to get 28. They gain 1 car. What about airplanes? Well, they had 7, but now they're going to get 8. So they gain 1 airplane. And so that's going to be number B. All right. And so that's it for, this is from chapter 3, the terms of trade. So now we'll look at some problems from chapter 2, where they look at some models and they talk about positive normative statements. So 12 here, make sure you know the difference between a positive and normative statement. Positive statement is something that can be either verified to be true or false. A normative is like, what should you do? All right, this is what you should do. Is a fall in a positive or normative statement. Minimum wage creates unemployment. Well, it may be true, it may not, but you can check it and verify whether it's good. Normative statement here would be like, the minimum wage is good. You should raise it really high, raise it to $15. Or the minimum wage is bad, it creates unemployment. I'm sorry, minimum wage is bad because the unemployment it creates isn't enough to compensate for the fact that people get a higher wage. So those are both like normative statements. Whereas here with a positive statement, you can look at data and say, oh, yay or nay. Okay, 12. So this is a positive statement. Which 2 groups of decision makers are included in the simple circular flow diagram? That's households and firms. Those are the 2 agents. Okay. You're looking at the flow of goods and services between households and firms, and also the flow of factors of production from households to firms. 14. In the circular flow diagram, firms produce, it's going to be B and C. They produce goods and services using the factors of production, and they also produce outputs using inputs. Okay, so the outputs for the goods and services, and the inputs for the factors of production. Those are just different names you can use for them. So it's going to be both of those, so it's D. 15. In the circular flow diagram, which of the following is not a factor of production? Well, it's money. The firm pays money to the households for these factors of production: labor, capital, and land. Okay. Capital, land, labor is flowing one way, the money's flowing the other, though. Okay. And so that's B. 16. In economics, capital refers to, talking about the buildings and machines. It's not talking about stocks and bonds and stuff like that, or money. When in economic terms, it's talking about, capital is when you invest in it, it's like actual stuff that's used to produce goods. So that's D. 17, in the circular flow diagram, in the market for goods and services, households and firms are both sellers. No, they're the firm is a seller there, but the household's a buyer. B, goods and services, households are sellers and firms are buyers. No, that's the other way around. All right, in the market for factors of production, households are seller, true, and firms are buyer, also true. All right, the firms are providing land, labor, capital, and the firms are actually buying that from them. So it's going to be C. All right. Well, let me draw this out. All right, so this next part, we're going to be looking at a diagram for a bunch of questions. So bear with me while I draw this out. We have sweaters on the y-axis and apples on the x-axis. And if they spend all their time, this country we're looking at, how does it say which country? No, it's just some country, their economy. They can produce 180 apples. All right. Or if they spend all their time producing sweaters, they can produce 200. Okay, and this is a bowed out production possibilities frontier curve. That's because the skills it requires to produce sweaters and the capital equipment is specialized versus what it takes to have an orchard and produce apples. So that means as you move from one to the other, the opportunity cost gets steeper and steeper. Okay, so what's the first question? If the economy devotes all of its resources to the production of apples, then it will produce 180 apples and 0 sweaters. So that's D. All right, here's the line: 0 sweaters, 180 apples. Well, obviously, if they're spending all the time doing that, they're going to produce 0 one of these goods. All right, 19. So refer to figure 1. Is it possible for the economy to produce? All right, so we have these different numbers here. I need to fill in some additional dots here. So Q is at 200 sweaters, 0 apples. 160 here. We have R. At R, you can produce 160 sweaters, 80 apples. What about T here? Well, T looks like it's about 130. 130 sweaters and 80 apples. All right, S is going to be like 140 sweaters and 140 apples. And we also have here at 80, U, 80 sweaters and 140 apples. That's a combination you create at U, and it's on the line here. And we have W that's down here somewhere. Okay. And we also have an X out here. So we'll use this to answer the rest of these questions. Okay. So 19, which of these is possible? 80 bushels of apples and 160 sweaters? Well, yeah, that's R. It's on the line, which is where it's efficient. It can produce that. So A is good. What about B? 80 bushels of apples and 160 sweaters. Wait a minute, what did I'm looking at the wrong, okay. 80 bushels of apples and 200 sweaters. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. So that would be up here. That wouldn't be possible. Anytime it's above this line and to the right, it's not possible. They don't have enough resources, enough capital, enough technology. They just can't produce at that level. It don't matter if they produce, did as much as they could. It's not possible to reach that point. Okay, so B is not possible. What about C? 180 bushels of apples right here and 200 sweaters. Well, that's certainly not possible. That's way outside of the rim. So not C either. So it's going to be A. And D is all the above. Of course, it's not all the above because these aren't good. 20, what's it asking? It is not possible for this economy to produce at which points? X and S. Okay. They just don't have enough resources, not enough manpower. They don't have enough. They're not at a high enough level of technology, not enough capital. They just can't produce that much. Remember, above and to the right it's not possible. 21. The economy cannot currently produce 140 bushels of apples and 140 sweaters because. All right, so that's going to be somewhere around in here. That's close to where S is at. All right, and so why can't it do that? Well, it does not have the resources and technology to produce that level of output. What were the other ones? It's not using the most efficient production process. No, if they're using the most efficient production process, they're going to be somewhere on the line. Okay. It's not using all of its resources. Well, if it uses all the resources, all of its efficient production processes, it's going to be somewhere on this line. All right, not to the above and to the right. It can't produce that many goods. Okay. What about 22? Suppose this economy is producing at point W. Which of the following statements would best explain the situation? Well, there's probably unemployment in the economy. That's usually what explains it when you're producing below that. Whenever the GDP for the country drops really drastically, it's usually for whatever reason, either sales weren't good enough, the economy's out of whack, and there's going to be a widespread unemployment in the economy. All the resources aren't being put to use. All right. And that's C. What are the other options? The economy has insufficient resource to produce at a more desired. No, you're just not using those resources. The economy's available technology prevents it from producing at a more desired. No. When at the current technology that it has, if you're using it and you're using your resource, you're going to be at the line. All right. So, there's obviously a recession going on when when you're inside this production possibilities frontier. 23. Efficient production is represented at which points? Anything on the line, Q, R, and U. Let's see. Did I do Q wrong? I think this, let's see here. So that should be Q, R, and U. Yeah, because Q's on the line. Yeah. Well, that one's wrong. Like it has R and U. It should be Q, R, and U. All right. So that's not on there. Like I'll have to correct that. So make note of that. Let me write this down. It's a pen. Correct answer key. I might have accidentally erased that or something. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I screwed that up when I threw it out. But yeah, so if it's on the line, that means it's efficient. And Q's on the line. All right. Oh, wait a minute. V as well. So that's C. Sorry. It is on there. So that's going to be C. I need to change that one. It's a C, not. Yeah, I guess what I did when I was filling it out, I didn't see those on the. I just saw the R and U. Yeah, V as well. So that's Q, R, U, V. And so that's going to be C. I got to change that. All right. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay. Let's see here. All right, so let's go to question 24. Let me erase this. We'll leave that on there. All right, so 24 is inefficient production is represented at which points? Well, that's going to be T and W. Anytime it's inside, below and to the left, that's going to be inefficient production. You're in a recession. You're not using all your resources, and so that is A. $25. The opportunity cost of this economy moving from point R to point U is going from R to U. Well, what are you losing? Well, you're gaining apples. You're gaining 60 apples, but you're losing 160 minus. You're going from 160 sweaters to 80. So you're losing 80 sweaters. And so that is B. That's what you're giving up. That's what these 60 apples are costing you. They're costing you the opportunity to produce 80 sweaters. That's the opportunity cost. 26. The opportunity cost of obtaining 30 additional sweaters by moving from point T to R is what? You're going from T to R. Well, you're not giving up anything. You're just like producing at your full capacity. So it's going to be 0. So that's A. And the last one for this section, the opportunity cost of obtaining 60 additional sweaters by moving from point U to S is what? Well, it's not possible to do that. So you can't do it in the first place. So it's not costing you anything since you can't do it. So that's going to be D. All right. None of the above. The economy cannot move from point U to point S. All right. So that's it for the, this is what I just got through doing this from chapter 2. Chapter 3 is what I started out on for the first 11 questions. And so now what we'll do, this will conclude this video. I'll make another one going through the remaining questions, and that'll cover chapters 10 and 11, looking at GDP and CPI. Let's see.